Hello, I'm Michael Kurland, CEO and co-founder of Branded Group, an award-winning facility maintenance and construction management company that services multi-site commercial properties such as retail, restaurants, healthcare facilities, and educational institutions. Welcome to the Be Better podcast. Each week, I interview thought leaders from a variety of industries who will share their stories and the lessons they learn as they strive to be better for their clients, partners, employees, and their community. Are you ready to be better? Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Be Better podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kurland. Today, joining me is Laura Hertz, co-founder and CEO of Gifts for Good. She's also Forbes 30 Under 30, a social entrepreneur, and serves on the National Board of Directors for the Cancer Society. Laura, can you please tell the audience a little bit more about your company and what you guys do?
Of course. Thanks for having me on the show, Michael. We are Gifts for Good, or giftsforgood.com if you want to check us out online. We're an e-commerce gifting website that sells hundreds of gifts that give back. So we partner with over 50 different nonprofits and social enterprises whose products we sell. If you're watching on video, you can see some of them behind me. I'm sitting in our showroom, but all of them have a beautiful story behind them and impact.
Well, that's great. I'm so excited to have you on the show. This season is all about gratitude and kind of the words that are synonymous with gratitude. Specifically, giving back is what we're talking about, going to be focusing on probably a little bit more today. And the reason I wanted to have you on and thought it was important to have you on is because, every year for holidays, I would always give my clients Harry and David. And I mean, personally, I don't get it. I don't get the pears. Everyone likes the pears. The golden pears are like the thing people fight over. I don't enjoy pears. But then we have a mutual friend and he introduced me to your company. And I was like, this is so aligned with what Branded Group does. And it's such a great idea. And I'm so glad that you came up with it. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about how that happened? And, like in the show notes, you sent me over your little clip that you did on Good Morning America. So obviously this is a big thing. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how Gifts for Good came to be, why it was important to you, and your little journey to get to 30 Under 30 and Good Morning America.
Yeah, of course. So we are the first source for corporate gifts with a social impact. So helping companies like yours to get away from Harry and David and some of those junk drawer kind of promotional swag that typically ends up in a junk drawer, and give something with a bit more meaning and story behind it when it comes to employee and client gifting. If you watched a little bit of my story, you probably saw some of that journey. I was working at Deloitte, and like a lot of people right after college, got recruited to one of the big four accounting firms. And I just saw so much swag ending up in the junk drawers there, and all these different gifts that we were getting as employees and new hires, and everyone just kind of right away either throwing them in the trash, putting them in a drawer, or joking about them. And I kept thinking to myself, man, there needs to be something better, especially in this industry. And before Deloitte, I had spent about 2 years before college working with AmeriCorps and volunteering with nonprofits all around the country. And that was just an amazing experience. And I had really always wanted to get back to really serving other people and giving back in some capacity. So I went actually back to business school, and I put this idea that I had working at Deloitte of seeing all of this junk drawer swag. I started researching the industry, and I spent about 6 months with my co-founder actually working on this business as a class project in business school. And I started learning about the corporate gifting industry, and I learned this is a $100 billion industry here in the US, which is astounding. Like, that's a very big industry, $100 billion a year being spent on corporate gifts. And to put that in perspective, I learned companies only donate $18 billion a year to philanthropic causes every year. So they're spending $100 billion on corporate gifts, but donating $18 billion a year to charitable causes. And I start looking at the stats, and I found out that over 50% of corporate gifts go to a landfill every 2 years. So you're literally just seeing $50 billion going into a landfill for corporate gifts. And that was just astounding to me. And just thinking about the impact that companies could have if they took this budget of money that they're already spending and then used it as a force for good and to change people's lives. So that's really the basis of really what we're doing. Started started as a class project in business school, and me and my co-founder looked at each other and we said, hey, this is a pretty good idea. Maybe we should work on it. And, here we are today, 4 years later. And I think it's definitely resonated with, companies around the country who are really just looking for something a bit more different and a better way to engage with their employees and clients.
Absolutely. And you said a lot of things there that really struck home for me. First thing I want to touch on is the drunk drawer swag. So we do trade shows at Branded Group every, we call it show season. So we're out hitting the road for about 3 months, and, people have got these stress balls and these tchotchkes and these pens. And I used to work for another company prior to Branded Group in the same industry. And, we had our tchotchkes and stress balls and koozies and all this other garbage. And and on top of we made bags. We made recyclable bags. That was one of our first things we did, because we thought, at least if you're going to, because there are people that do want to fill those bags with the junk that they take home to their kids. Right. But, eventually I started saying, what are we wasting this money on? And on top of that, I hated shipping it to and from the show, because you never got rid of all of it, right? Because you have to order in bulk.
You can't, yeah.
Yeah. And so we started doing, for the shows, we started doing a giveaway with local nonprofits. So we would put our fishbowl out, and we'd make cards ahead of time, and it said, whoever's has the most votes, and it was between the local Humane Society, the local food pantry, and the local veterans. Mm-hmm. And whoever you put your name, your email, and you circle a card which one you want to vote for. And at the end, we'll donate $500, because I'm going to spend more than that just probably on shipping the stuff there and back. And it was a huge success. And at the end of the day, I didn't want to give away stupid tchotchkes. And much
better way to do it. Yeah.
And I want you to guess which one won 90% of the time.
Ooh, I don't know. Was it veterans?
Nope. No? The veterans never won. The pets won. The pets won 90% of the time. So as humans,
people love pets. That's true. It's always the dogs and cats, and it'll definitely resonate when it comes to. We have a software that gives you a choice between a gift, a physical gift, or a donation choice. And I would say pets is usually one or two, and then meals for children always gets people too.
Yeah. Well, and then it's working the same with us. So yeah. So. We started doing that, and that's why when JP reached out to me and said that we should know each other, it just made so much sense, because I'm like, this is what I've been looking for. So kudos to you. But I have a question, and I think the audience probably wants to know this too. Did you get an A on the project?
I did get an A on the project. Actually, that professor has been one of the biggest supporters of us, and she's just been an amazing asset and wanted to provide guidance literally since the day we launched. So now everyone at USC at the Marshall School of Business has somehow heard in her class about us, because now we're her shining star that she showcases. So I think we got an A on it. Not that I really remember, but I'm pretty sure.
Right. Because if you had gotten a B, maybe that would have deterred you a little bit, but it would have been shame on that professor, right?
Right.
maybe your grading scale needs a little bit better of a bell curve. Anyway, I digress. So let's talk a little bit about gratitude, right? Because that's where you talked about, being servant leadership-ish and wanting to do AmeriCorps, which is kudos to you. I never had the, I'll say guts to do that. I always thought it was cool, but I'm very, I don't know if this makes sense, and it's pictured in my mind, so maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like you're not showering as much because you're out working.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I definitely had my khaki pants that went up to my belly button, and my big belt that went around my gray t-shirt that I tucked in. And I would say we showered on a good week, maybe 2 days, 3 days a week. And you would get really dirty. I mean, you're leading volunteers on the roof in Louisiana on 115 degrees, it's not a good situation.
Well, kudos to you. That's awesome. I have to shower every day. It's it's a thing. But so let's talk about that a little bit, because we're talking about gratitude. What's the best thing you did and you learned on your AmeriCorps volunteerism, and what sparked you to do that?
Yeah, it was a really amazing thing that I did right after high school for a year before I went to college at UC Berkeley. I actually had gone down to New Orleans to Louisiana to volunteer, and I led a group of high school students actually in my class, and we all went down there, were volunteering, and I was just struck by the nation really wasn't talking about what was happening after Hurricane Katrina. And when I went down and saw it firsthand, I could not believe the devastation and how many people still didn't have homes years after the hurricane. And it just struck something in me. And while we were down there volunteering, we worked a little bit with an AmeriCorps group, and I saw the work that they were doing. And I had already accepted my college acceptance, and I ended up coming home and being like, I'm taking a year off. I'm going to volunteer. I just feel like I need to do something after seeing that. And it was the most amazing experience of my life and fundamental to what I do today. I mean, you're 18 years old, and I was lucky enough to grow up in a place with, food in my belly and a roof over my head and a great public education and things that most of the world is not so blessed to have. And I think the whole experience really put it in perspective with me. We spent about 6-7 months down in New Orleans, Louisiana, Mississippi, rebuilding homes. We worked with Habitat for Humanity, rebuilding them from the ground up. I also did a fun process of mold remediation on homes, which is not fun. It's a very dirty work. You're putting on your full hazmat suit. You're climbing through the rafters of the house. It's some fun stuff. And we also taught in the inner city schools here in LA. And I really lived in the inner city as well, in a really bad area and neighborhood, and definitely taught me what it's like for these kids to go home to that kind of environment every day. And then I also worked at a food bank up in Sacramento, the Sacramento Food Bank and Family Services. And I was there during the holidays, and that was just an amazing experience as well. Was helping to run the largest clothing distribution program in the state of California. And then I did their big turkey run, which in Sacramento, a lot of people have heard of Run to Feed the Hungry. Probably over 30,000 people do it in the city every year. Helped organize that whole experience. And I mean, all of these different pockets, I think, just made me grateful in so many different capacities of my life. Teaching in the inner city made me grateful for my education and everything that I had grown up with. I felt so grateful that I had a Thanksgiving meal every day of my life, and never in my life was that something that I never thought my family would have. So seeing all these thousands of families coming to pick up their Thanksgiving meal, I mean, just changes you. There's something about that whole experience. And then I think just rebuilding homes in Louisiana, like I was so grateful for having a roof over my head and just shelter. So I think it's these basic needs that you kind of take for granted, and they can just go over your head when you're working and busy and a normal professional, and having that kind of experience just, I think, puts it all in perspective as well.
Wow. So much to unwrap there. So you were totally built to run this company from a young age. So kudos to you for, being able to look at it from that lens in your teens and really seeing, there's so much entitlement out there these days. And now for you to have seen that in your 16, 18 years and being able to go out and do that, that's good for you. But I want to touch on a couple of things there. First and foremost, Habitat for Humanity, great organization. We at Branded Group also partner with them. We've helped build over 12 homes in Southern California and in Suffolk County, New York. And if you've never volunteered at Habitat, audience, I really recommend getting out and go swing a hammer. They're not going to let you do anything that you can't do. And actually, if you've ever talked to a PM on a Habitat site, they'll tell you that they're probably going to have a professional crew come in and fix everything you did anyway. So it'll pass inspection, and you get to learn the ins and outs of building a home. But then the thing I really like that Habitat does is they let you meet the people that you're building the home for, because they have to work side by side with you. Mm-hmm. And you get to learn their story and what you're doing to help change their lives. So anyway, I started at Habitat in college. And again, that was our first one-for-one program partner. We've since also grown with the Second Harvest Food Pantry out here. So you said giving Thanksgiving meals, you sparked this in my mind. I volunteered in St. George, Utah. That's where my dad used to live and my aunt and uncle live. Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty well-to-do neighborhood, but they had this one volunteer place. And on Thanksgiving, I got my whole family about 3 or 4 years ago to go down and do exactly what you said. And just to see people that were so grateful to have a turkey dinner. So many people, not just like, not just, and this is just one small town that you wouldn't even think was not in a bad way. And so many people from there. So again, I'm glad that you brought that up because I want to encourage the audience, even though food pantries and volunteerism will tell you Thanksgiving and Christmas are the most highly high days that they have volunteers. I still think it's pertinent for everyone to go do that because it's so important to see what you just said, what it's like for someone to not have food in their bellies and really like be thankful and grateful for what you have. So anyway, I digress, but I thought you brought up so many good points I wanted to touch on. So let's talk about this now. You're grown up, you've got this great company and you've practiced gratitude and you've seen the graciousness of your environment around you. What do you do now? What does this like high level young professional do to practice gratitude on a daily basis?
Yeah, I have one thing that someone actually gave to me the year I was starting the business, and it's one of my favorite tools. I don't know if you've used it. It's called the 5-minute journal. You can buy it on Amazon. Super simple way to practice gratitude, but I give it to all of our employees when they start, and it's just a really great practice of practicing gratitude in the morning and evening. So twice a day, it takes 2 minutes, and pretty much the tool has you write down 3 things you're grateful for that morning, 3 things that could make that day great, and then 1 daily affirmation. And then when you're going to bed, you pretty much do the same thing. Talk about 3 things that were great that happened that day and how you could have made that day even better. And it's such a simple way to just rewire your brain and just focus on gratitude. Because I think sometimes, especially when you're stressed or you've had a hard week at work, it'll just put it in perspective of, maybe this small thing that I've been focusing on, it really doesn't matter. Here are the things I have to be grateful for at the end of the day. So that's just a small thing that I do, but it really helps me. And it takes 2 minutes and the journal costs like $10. So I just recommend anyone out there buy it on Amazon. Great tool to use to practice gratitude on a daily basis.
I like that. That's, and the season's been our longest season because there's so much to talk about with gratitude. But I've talked to, I think you're like the 11th or 12th guest for this season. And everyone of the 11 or 12, we've asked this question and they all have different ways to practice gratitude on a daily basis. So I hope the audience is taking some notes on that, but great tool. But I think what the big thing with that tool is probably, and I hope you agree with me on this, is consistency, right? If you're not doing it every day, it's not going to be as useful.
Exactly. I recommend if you get it, I literally put it below my feet. So when I get out of bed, my feet hit it and then I'm like, oh yeah, I got to do that. So it just reminds me to do it, in bed, right when I'm getting into bed and right when I get out of bed. Otherwise you can just start focusing on some other things and sending emails. So I literally make it a practice to step on it and then start that journaling.
I love it. That is a totally new one. Put it under your feet in the morning. I love it. So we're hopefully, I like to think with, especially, both of us being in California, the way California is handling the vaccinations, but hopefully for the rest of the country and the world, we're coming to the backside of COVID-19. So let's talk about your time with COVID and what has it taught you about being grateful?
Oh man, I think it's taught me so many things. This past year was such a journey for us. I think in the beginning, it was really difficult because we work with so many nonprofits and social enterprises, and a lot of them have job training programs. So that means they're bringing groups of people together to make our products. So maybe we have a group of people who are transitioning out of homelessness who are hand making our cutting boards in downtown LA, or we have a group of women refugees who are hand making our candles in Massachusetts. So a lot of these organizations were impacted in the beginning, and it was just so sad. You're just getting all of these calls of, hey, we need to shut down our shelter. We need to shut down this program temporarily. And I think those first couple months, like they were for everyone, were just pretty much like, what is this going to look like? How are we going to get through this? How are we going to survive? And I think in the beginning, a lot of people too, were cutting back on those initial budgets. But I think what was amazing last year is I saw more companies than ever looking for ways to give back and recognizing how important that was to their employees and to their clients, and just spreading like that message of good in a time when I think everyone really needed some powerful and positive messaging. So right after we got through that initial hump, like we really recognized the power of what we were doing to support all of our nonprofit and social enterprise partners. And we became really an engine for a lot of them to keep their doors open last year. So that was just for me something where we just really recognized how grateful we were to have this type of model, because they may have lost their consumer arm of their business, but we were able to keep sending them corporate and bulk orders. And for us, that was just a really amazing feeling. So it was great to see, I think, more companies than ever just standing up and really showcasing their values and finding ways to, incorporate doing good. Even say maybe your client holiday party was canceled. We had some companies come to us and say, hey, I have a $75,000 budget. I no longer have this party. What can I do with it? What organizations can I give it to? So that was just really great. And I think we just feel really grateful for having a wonderful year last year and being able to literally impact hundreds of thousands of people's lives last year. So that was wonderful and definitely a gift to our team.
Yeah, it's to your point, we definitely canceled our holiday party. We had to deal with all the uncertainty in the beginning, but like you said, I think we're coming out the backside, and I think being able to like get all these people back and working is something to be grateful for. But you touched on, the people in the shelter in LA that are making cutting boards, and the women's shelter in Massachusetts that's making things for you. So tell the audience just a little bit about that, because I know they can go to the website, but I think that is really important for them to hear from your mouth. What is it exactly like? How does it work with some of your nonprofit organizations that are making these gifts? Let's talk about that.
A lot of people, it's definitely a new concept and they haven't heard of the types of organizations that we're working with. So we partner with both nonprofits as well as social enterprises, so businesses that are making money but doing good in the world and have that really built into their business model. We work with over 50 different organizations, all with different unique ways of giving back. So for example, we might have candles that are actually handmade by women refugees who are in a job training program in Massachusetts. Or we'll have leather products that are made down in Honduras. And for every bag that you buy, you're providing 7 days of schooling for a child in Honduras. And if you go onto our website, you can actually see the specific impact of every single purchase and what that impact is creating. And it's a really unique experience and something that takes a lot of time as we're establishing our partnerships with our nonprofits and social enterprises, because we actually measure impact down to the product level. So, for example, when you buy this soap and candle, it's providing an hour of job training for women who are transitioning out of homelessness. So a lot of these are actually job training programs that we work with. And these nonprofits actually use the sale of physical products to help fund their missions. And so that's a new concept for a lot of people. It's not just us taking a percentage back and giving it to Habitat for Humanity. A lot of these are actual programs that are run by nonprofits that are employing people in need and actually helping to fund the nonprofit program. So that's a really, unique aspect of what we're doing, and definitely bringing that story to life is really key to all of our gifts. So when you get one of them, you get a social impact story card is what we call it. You can see some of them behind me if you're watching on video, and you get to read that story behind the product, how it's changing someone's life. And you might showcase, just like what you said with Habitat for Humanity, where you get to meet the person who you're impacting. Most of the time you'll see a photo of one of the makers on the front of that story card and get to read about their story and how that product is changing someone's life.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for sharing that. I just think that's really important for the audience to hear. And you mentioned your software and your tracking. I am not tech savvy at all, but I do know that you guys have great software and you have the ability to collect a lot of different data and get it. And it's not just like, it's who accepted, what they got. And then when you get the gift, it's like you just mentioned, you get to know a little bit about what you just contributed to. So anyway, I digress, but I thought that was really important to touch on. So thanks for going down that road with me.
Yeah, of course.
So sticking with COVID-19 pandemic, how has it impacted your ability to give back? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we felt really, really grateful. Last year, we were able to grant over $400,000 to our nonprofit partners. We planted over 500,000 trees last year. We gave over 85,000 meals. Those are just some of the stats that we were able to do, but we had an incredible impact last year. And I think much more than we ever imagined we could have. Definitely saw just a lot of traction and more people wanting to give back than ever and tell that story through their corporate gifting budget, especially. But last year, as you mentioned, we did have software and we launched that last year. That was actually as a result of the pandemic that we ended up building that out. Pretty much me last March sat down and I thought, how is this going to change the nature of the work that we're doing where we're giving gifts? And naturally, I thought it's going to get hard to gather people's home shipping addresses. So we actually built out a software that gives you the ability to send a gift via email, and then you can enter your shipping address. But the cool part about it is you can go in, you can actually choose what gift you want to redeem. So maybe it's a bag or a blanket or a water bottle. And then, as you mentioned, you could have some donation choices in there like pets or meals or children. So you can actually choose a physical product or to donate it forward. And that software and the really just the idea behind it took a lot of traction last year. Companies did not have people's home shipping addresses. So the fact that you could send a gift easily via email really resonated. And it also obviously just helped us to decrease waste, because rather than choosing a gift for someone, they're almost able to go shopping for themselves. And then if they don't need a product, they could donate the value. And so that was just an amazing thing for us. Having the donation option in our portal ended up, I think we were able to increase our giving over $300,000 last year versus the year before because of having that option. So I think we feel grateful. A lot of people who I think resonated with the idea of, hey, I don't need a gift, but I can donate the value, or this is great. I'm not just getting, a water bottle sent from a company where they're choosing to give 500 water bottles to everyone on their list. You can actually choose what product you want. So that was a great thing for us. And we were definitely able to scale our impact like exponentially last year when we launched that software.
And that's, that for businesses out there like mine, it's amazing software because it's amazing technology because, like you just said, I know where everything's going. I know that you're not getting a stress ball and throwing it in the trash, and then half of those stress balls are going to the landfill, right? So I really am grateful that you guys came up with this idea and that I was able to connect with you and figure out how to incorporate that to Branded Group. So let's talk about this. We've talked about the give back. You guys are all about giving gifts for good. So what best practices can you share about how to develop a social impact strategy and engage your team?
So many different ways to engage your team. I think a lot of companies don't integrate giving back into their day-to-day operations in a way that they can. And they don't really look at something just as simple as giving corporate gifts, right? It's an area where you can take, maybe you have $1 million pre-existing budget, and you can take that exact same budget and use it as a force for good. I think there's so many ways that companies can look at all of the work that they're doing, whether it's the suppliers they work with or the people that they partner with, and really be able to work and continue, representing their values through who they work with throughout their supply chain. So there's so many different ways that companies can go about that. But I think at the end of the day, being authentic to your brand, to your company, and who you are is really, really essential. I think people can feel right away if it's not authentic to you and your company. So I always recommend to companies, keep that impact really authentic to your brand and to your company, and make sure that it just really aligns with you, because when you do that, it's going to really enable your employees and clients to resonate more with what you're doing as well.
Yeah, I think you made a lot of good, important points right there. I think especially with the workforce turning more millennial, they are very they want to have a higher something. They want a purpose, yes, right?
We do. We want the purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you are a millennial. Okay, cool. So yes, we know that you guys want a purpose more than money or status, and it's as important to you, right? So I think that's important for people listening out there. If you are looking to start a social impact strategy for your company, to know that it's important to your employees, and it's also important to your clients. And you mentioned you may have $1 million budget, but I also think it's important, and I talked about this in a few other podcasts, that you don't have to have $1 million budget. You can start, like Branded Group started with no budget, and we went and partnered with Habitat for Humanity about 6 years ago. And when we started the 1-for-1 program, and they, when we walked in the door with them, they said, "Oh, well, this is how corporations give back. Sign a check for $5,000. We'll do this, cookie cutter build day for you and your team." And I was like, "That, you guys aren't hearing me. Like, I don't have $5,000 to give you. And that's not what I want to do. I just want to volunteer for you guys when you guys have holes, because I know when you guys have build days or restores, you got to be short on volunteers at least sometimes. So when you're short on volunteers, I want to be the source that you go to." And they're like, "Oh, wow, okay." Yeah. And so we built this program together, and it cost me absolutely nothing except time. And
so many ways to do that with your employees, right? Like, you just there's so many ways to engage them in activities and activations, and it doesn't need to be money spent. I think that's some of the funnest work that we do, because we're not just a gifting company. We actually design a lot of activations and corporate events too. So for example, we helped Snapchat design their entire global day of service last year across over 30 countries with 4,000 employees. And we were trying to find a way for them to just better engage virtually in today's environment. So, we designed a whole landing page and this like kindness quest thing where all of their employees could check off acts of kindness to fellow employees, to people that they've worked with in the past, to friends, to family. There's so many ways that you can do that and just be authentic and do it in a way that's engaging your employees. Yeah.
Key word that I want to raise awareness to is authentic. If you're not being authentic, if you're doing any of this because you think it's going to increase sales or you're going to get some good PR, you will get that in the short term. But if you're not being authentic, it's not going to last. And so it's got to come from inside of you, I think.
Yeah.
So this has been a great show. I've really enjoyed having you on. I got to ask you one last question though. I ask everyone, what do you consider yourself to be an expert at, and what advice do you have for the audience to become an expert at said thing?
I would say I'm an expert at social entrepreneurship. So really using business as a force for good. And I think I would say to people, a lot of people say you have to find your passion. And that term just really annoys me. I never think that people are ever going to find their passion. It's never going to be handed to them on a silver plate. So I always say to people, you build your passion and it takes work. And I think there's so many ways that you can go about that, whether it's entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship. So like looking at your job today, designing programs that will bring more purpose to your work. And there's so many different ways that you can go about just really building your passion and bringing that to life. So I would say to everyone, you're not going to find your passion, but go build it.
I like it. My passion that I've found is wine and cooking. And I've been building up my recipe repertoire since we moved into the new house. So I finally have kitchen space, but I digress. So Laura, it's been great having you on. I really appreciate the time. The audience wants to get a hold of you. How can they do so?
You can go to giftsforgood.com. And if you want to shoot me an email, my email is laura@giftsforgood.com.
Great. Well, Laura, thank you. And audience, until next time.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. I hope that today's episode inspired you to become a purpose-driven leader in your career or your community. There's no doubt that when we lead with purpose, we can change lives. If you enjoyed today's show, I'd be grateful if you would take a moment to rate us on your preferred listening platform. To learn more about Branded Group's Be Better experience and how we provide industry-leading, on-demand facility maintenance, construction management, and special project implementation, visit us at www.branded-group.com. Be sure to follow us on social media, and you can also reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. Until next time, be better.